Hello, everyone. Reporting from Sicily. Ciao, Alfred.
Reporting from Massachusetts, the
Yes.
Republic of Massachusetts.
So you're coming back in a few days. Are you excited?
Are you excited? That's the
I
question.
can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm
I
counting down the days.
just have to get my final blood thing, whatever quick test tomorrow, and that's it. You know,
That's it. So
next
we've
day I
got
leave.
lots to talk about, including some of the current situations here in Sicily and some other news. And Alfred has a beautiful story about his grandfather to talk about. But and I also got some beautiful lemons from our neighbors. So let's start out. Today was a beautiful day here in Sicily. It's 65. And I took some video of Etna. She looks beautiful with her white hair. But boy, Sicily's been hit hard by terrible, terrible weather. I mean, the footage that you're looking at is surreal, right? It looks like a funnel tornado ripped through here. And unfortunately, one person did die. Severe damage to roads, to homes, to businesses. It was crazy. I mean, Alfred, you're looking at video from our friend Joe and Michelle. They were at the archaeological park in Saloninte, and all of a sudden, hailstorm starts falling. I mean, in some places, they were this big. They were big as oranges. So scary situation here in Sicily for, not only October, we had those two water bombs, but also November.
I can never remember weather being this bad, but up until there's all these water bombs, we really needed the water. And I understand that in one day during one of these storms, they got a year's worth of water in some
Yeah.
places. So hopefully that the crops are going to be okay. And hopefully when I get there, it gets back to normal, although it seems like it's getting back to normal, thank God. And that's
Now,
it. So,
now, if you remember, Alfred, in August when we were doing our chats, we were complaining about two things: the wildfires and no rain.
right.
Because it was severe drought here in August, and we've gone completely polar opposites to abnormal water bombs. And
You think
I
we'll have
was
any snow?
well, Etna's
Only
already
joking,
white.
just a joking, just a
Etna's already
joke.
white. And if
Yeah.
you remember, Alfred, Syracuse recorded the highest temperature in Europe in August, 122, a historic. So they're saying all these warm weathers, the warm oceans has just caused these abnormal weather scenes. But my heart goes out to the families and friends of, for example, the deceased man from Modica. There was also an incident in October when one person died. But boy, these businesses that have been hit hard, these crops, the farmers, Alfred, when, because the roads are not all paved, so this mud forms all over the place. People had to be rescued from their cars. So it's just a terrible situation.
Like I said before, Esther, Sicilians are profoundly resilient people. They
Yeah.
will adapt. And the other thing, the old saying about, when a disaster happens, a new opportunity presents itself.
Well
So,
said, Bunny Bum Bum.
so I'm sure that there's going to be new opportunities. I still think that it's the political class who is generally, as a rule, unprepared, generally does the least amount to get by, is one of the issues. Now, thankfully, some money is arriving in Sicily to
Yeah.
address some of the infrastructure problems. That's the whole thing, is the drainage. So if they, or else give everybody a lifeboat or a life jacket,
And
one or the other.
plus the insulation in houses, right? That's a big issue here. A lot of houses don't have insulation. It's crazy.
The other thing too is mold, mufa. They call it
Yeah.
mufa because what happens in a concrete house like we have is that when the water seeps through and it dries, uh, in between the walls, mold grows, and
Yeah.
that's a big problem. Mufa. You always have to check for the mufa, and really the only thing that gets rid of it is some type of chemicals like maybe hydrogen peroxide, and we have our cleaner comes in. As soon as I spot it,
Yeah.
we have Angela
Or
comes in,
alcohol. Or
or
alcohol. That's
alcohol,
what.
something like that. Yeah.
Alfred, I've been to the market and I've been asking all our vendors, how are the farms, what's going on? I mean, there has been some destruction and obviously a lot of water. Way too much water is never
Yeah.
too good. A lot of citrus groves have been destroyed, but thankfully all of our olive groves that we have, our memorial, olive tree memorial, all those groves were okay. And today, Francesco, our neighbor, if you guys have seen him here, he brought me some lemons. That is neighbor in Augusta. Now, this is a normal lemon. This is a lemon from him. I said, is the farm okay? He said, no, 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 the farm is fine. So some places, thankfully, were spared.
Let me give you a secret here, okay? As one who imported a lot of stuff for many years into the United States, anytime there's a quote unquote disaster, is a
Yeah.
good opportunity for people to say there's going to be a shortage on that product line, so the prices go up, whether it's olives or whether it's grapes. I mean, listen to me, okay? As I said, Sicily is resilient. And don't you
Yeah.
think that some of the Sicilians have insurance policies on these so-called groves? So
Well,
let's
like
just
I
see how
said,
it plays out. Yeah, let's see how it
not a
plays
lot of
out.
destructions. And,
Right.
Francesca said that there are some shortages of some vegetables and fruits. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm
As I
sure.
said,
Short
it's
term,
a
maybe.
beautiful, hopefully short term.
Yeah, yeah.
The other,
Wait a minute. You look
yes.
lovely today, Esther.
Oh,
You
thanks.
look
I seriously
absolutely
can't wait to see you.
beautiful. You really look lovely today. You look marvelous.
You look marvelous. Thanks, honey. All right, listen. So the other big thing is that next year, starting next year, the €2, the face of the €2 will be Falcone and Borsellini's famous face because it's going to be the 30th year anniversary of their murder. Just 1992, the few months apart, the two judges, heroes, big time heroes. I need to get my hand on one of those, Alfred.
You know something, Esther? Just looking at the papers like I did, as Italian Sicilian papers every day, they're still busting mafioso
Yeah.
left and right, right and left, up and down every day. And it's not just one or two guys. They're gangs, clans as they call, because it's all clan related.
Yeah.
15, 20 people. You think it's ever going to end? And they all are lineal descendants of those who
Of the old
assassinated,
timers.
yeah, who assassinated Falcone and Borsellino. You've got the old Totorina gang from Palermo, the Santa Paolo gang, and their clans, so to speak. And it's the same thing in Calabria. It's clans, you know.
But,
Some
you
people
know,
call them tribes. I don't know what the heck they call, but
but I thought it was a beautiful symbol to remember those two heroes. And by the way, you guys, we did an entire episode because Alfred and I were invited to go to the old prison where they had the Maxi trials.
yeah.
And the president of the Republic, Sergio Mattarella, who, by the way, is also Sicilian, spoke. And I got to interview some people there. So that was really neat. The other thing in conjunction with this is that they are giving out the first 100 so-called Falcone trees, and the purpose is to give school children sort of an environmental, a civic lesson, and so the kids will be planting them. The first 100 were given in Palermo, and there's many others coming. So it's called the Falcone tree, a tree for the future. So I
If they
love that
want to,
notion.
if they want to obliterate the mafia, they have to cut the source of its employees, so to speak. As the economy is bad, that's prime recruiting time for muscle, so to speak, for the mafia. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's one of the things they have to do. And the other thing they have to do is really address the migrant issue once and for all,
But sweetie
because
pie,
organized groups within the migrants are also engaging in, illicit behavior
yeah.
from drugs and especially prostitution. Okay, it's all over the place.
I understand, sweetie pie, but I think what I'm talking about is something different. I'm talking about a memorial tree to give kids a, uh, a reason to educate them, a way to help the environment. And so these Falcone trees are very symbolic. And I think the coin and also these types of trees, which, by the way, are going to be given out in the entire country of Italy to several schools. It's just a beautiful
I think it
way
is too. I
of
agree.
remembering.
Yep.
But if you want to talk about how to, stop this kind of uh, activity, I don't think you'll ever be able to stop this type of activity because the roots are too deep. And talk about the roots are too deep into mafia. It's too much into their mentality.
The whole thing about the mafia really goes back to recent history in Sicily and Italy. Okay, we call, of course, the fascist oppression for decades, and not only the fascist oppression under Mussolini, but also the German occupation over here. And the police authorities, the local police, were the enforcement arm of whatever oppressor was here, the oppressor du jour, so to speak. So there was a natural distrust for authorities. Even to this day, there's a natural distrust for authorities. And that's been a fertile recruiting ground for the mafia, especially as the economy has tanked. That's where they get
Yeah.
their muscle. What can I say?
Yeah. All right. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Because while you were home, you got a beautiful gift from your brother.
My brother.
Something. Yep.
Okay. If are we got to talk about my brother right now? Then I have to do one thing. I have to turn my hat this way. And the reason I'm turning my hat this way, Esther, is because this is how my brother Tommy wears his hat.
Oh,
So
come on.
out of tribute to my brother Tommy, I will briefly say that it was the nicest gift that I've received from this man in my entire life.
Very
So
thoughtful.
we're
Very
very thoughtful
thoughtful.
for my
To
brother.
talk about the book that Mr. Wood, who was the owner of the company that your grandfather worked at, Alfio Zappala, worked at, he gave all his employees a book to write their memories in, sort of like a
Well,
diary.
here's the backstory of that cover of the book. Okay, the my grandfather, when he got his job for the first time, was before World War One broke out. In 1915, he was working at the American Woolen Mill. Okay, and he was an Italian citizen. He never became an American citizen. So when the war broke out, he went back to Italy. How he went back, I'm sure it wasn't a plane. So we're talking about some type of a boat,
Yeah.
going back. And he enlisted in the Italian army, who was, by the way, a ally of America during World War One. Okay,
Because he never gave up his citizenship, right?
never gave up his citizens,
He remained
right?
an Italian citizen.
And he was a hero. I mean, he fought. He ended up being a sergeant. He was wounded on the battlefields, and after the war, he came back, and he went back to the American Woolen Mills where he worked. Still not becoming a citizen. Married my grandmother Zena, and Mr. Wood gave to the employee that the cover of that book. That the cover of that book that if you open it up, but I couldn't show the pictures right now, is the memoirs of the Americans and Italian veterans had of the war. So they were supposed to write in like
Sort of like
like
a
a
diary.
diary, like a
Yeah.
diary. And my grandfather had a few passages in there, which I'm bringing the book back because the book needs to be reunited in Sicily. That's basically where it came from. So, and I'm going to have Stefania or your Italian teacher
So,
translate
Alfred,
it.
so every employee got this. So
Not every
imagine,
employee, every
not every
veteran, the
veteran. Now,
veterans, the
imagine
veterans.
if someone started a project to collect all these books, see what all these veterans wrote about their daily lives or memories
Yeah.
they had. What an incredible collection that would be to put
Well, I
together,
know the
right?
Lawrence History Center. Look at the Lawrence History Center did something. As a matter of fact, my grandfather's brother was actually killed
Yeah.
in an accident in France. Okay, his name was Matteo. That's why everybody in my family, Alfred Matthew Zappala. My
Yeah.
son is named Matthew Joseph Zappala. Everybody has that Matthew in tribute to him who was killed. It
Now,
looked
wasn't
like
your
he fell off
grandfather
a
wounded?
truck. Yes, my
Wasn't your
grandfather was
grandfather
shot. I remember he had
in
the
France?
shrapnel in his lip,
Yeah.
and he was a big, strong guy. God rest his soul. He was a gentleman. My brother and my sister were talking about that. We really considered him to be our surrogate father. He was
Oh.
over our house every single night. Yeah. So, and
Now,
anyways,
can I
besides
show
that
this
book,
medal?
yeah, that's the Medal of Valor that he. Thank you, Esther. That's the Medal of Valor that he received, And I found the citation signed by the president of Italy, which I sent, which
Wow.
you'll see right here,
Yeah.
that goes with that. So those two are getting reunited because I've always had
That's
that medal.
beautiful.
And then the other thing is, you'll see
What
some
about the
pictures of
other
my.
medals? What
The
about the
other
other
medals were
medals?
battle medals or sharpshooting medals or conduct medals that a typical military guy has. But very interestingly, when he came back, and this is an unbelievable story, he never told anybody in the family about his exploits until he was about ready to die. 10 years when he was in his late
Sorry
70s. He
to know
died in
this.
the 80s. And my Uncle Jimmy tried to get him a pension, but by that, an Italian pension based
Yeah.
on all this stuff. But it was too late to apply for a pension, if you can believe that.
Alfred, so he never talked about the stories?
Never
Never.
once.
And
My
why, how come
he was a
how come he
farmer.
didn't become a US citizen? Why did he choose not to?
That was the story of my family. There are two different types of Sicilian immigrants. There were those that adopted the American way,
Yeah.
and there were those that didn't. My family, even though we love America very much, most of my relatives, except for some, uh, chose to stay Italian citizens
Yeah.
and didn't become American citizens. Now, the children became American citizens because they were born in the United States.
Yeah.
Did you know that 50% of all immigrants who came in at the end of the 19th and 20th centuries, a couple few million of them, about 50% went home. They
Yeah.
ended up coming back. Okay. And the ones that stayed ended up sending money to those that were in Sicily. Basically, it was a survival type thing. And Lawrence was very famous. It's known as the immigrant city, and it had one of the largest immigrant Sicilian population in all of America. Next to New York City and Chicago, Lawrence was in the top five. And nowadays, of course, as things happen to us, as that generation, the greatest generation, got older, they moved into the suburbs.
Yeah.
And Lawrence is left with the history and the memory of those, who lived and died and so forth. My
Al,
generation is,
talk to me
we're the
about your
immediate.
memories of your grandfather Alfio.
We had a,
You guys had kind of
excuse
have
me.
a little bit of the same facial structure.
Yeah, he was strong as hell. He had big, huge muscles. All right. I mean, they were just like big, huge. We had a farm in Methuen, the next town over. And if you went onto that farm, that he bought a piece of land, not a big piece of land, maybe a few hundred yards by a few hundred yards, but we had a cherry tree, we had tomatoes, we had zucchini, we had a fig tree. He built the house, the little house, country house, with his own hands. We had what they called a bacalzu. You know what a bacalzu is?
Yes.
We had a bacalzu. We had an outhouse in the back of the house, bacalzu, and that's what we did. Number one and number two. And I remember. Let me tell you something, okay? Going to the old bacalzu first thing in the morning when it was cold. Being a little kid, it was tough, right? But the big
Yeah.
the big thing was the harvest with my mother and my aunts all
So
coming
that's where
over.
you get
Those
your
two,
green thumb. Because
pretty
you're quite
much,
that,
yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah. I
quite the
mean, my
gardener.
whole life we had that. My brother Tommy and Anna, when I was 10 years old, the state of Massachusetts took over all those farms by eminent domain to make Interstate 495.
Oh, wow.
So where Heavenly Donuts is, that place right off of the highway, to the right across the street was the area that they took, and our farm was on there. But the Merrimack used to go by. My neighbor, we had the cherry tree. My neighbors next door had the mulberry tree, where we used to be able to pick those mulberries and put them in your hand and eat them, and you get drippings all over the place. I
Great
am so
memories.
old school, and I'll tell you something else, Esther. As I get older, I was talking about this to Jim Scully last week. My dear friend Jim Scully. As we get older, we kind of harken back to our memories and the whole
Nothing wrong
business.
with that.
Yeah, nope. There's the whole business of being old school. I prefer that. I prefer that era.
Well, that's why you feel so
Yeah.
comfortable here in Sicily.
That's exactly why I came. As a matter of fact, it's kind of funny you said that, but in the book that Mark Hale made, the book of this fellow took and he took sections from books from lots of people, and he composed it into a wonderful book. Esther's going to show. Esther has the cover there that you're looking at. The chapter that he selected, he asked me to contribute. The chapter that I put in there was, why did I come to Sicily? And it took me years to figure out what the heck I'm doing here. And that chapter described why I was here. And it's basically has to do with the old timers that, of course, aren't gone, because now I'm the old timer. My brother
Yeah.
is the old timer. We're the old timers.
With
But
great
that's the way it got.
stories.
Yeah, it
That's
is a great story. So I'm bringing this
great
stuff
story.
back to Sicily, and I think it belongs there. I have other stuff there, and there's lots of different stories that I can, and maybe as the weeks go on, I'll tell a different story about some of the heroes that I know of in my family who kept it quiet. They didn't brag about this stuff.
I think,
It's
Alfred, I think a
crazy.
lot of people are like that. A lot of people
Yeah,
were
yeah,
not
yeah.
bragging, not just Sicilians, also my grandparents, Hungarian grandparents, they're,
Right. That's right.
very proud of what they do. But now, as I talk to my mom and recollect some of the things that they did, some of the heroes that they were, they never bragged about it. They never talked about it.
Well,
So,
you know,
what a
being
great
being with your mother
generation.
for the last couple of weeks here, you know how fond I am of Clara. I mean, Clara is a living angel on earth, period. And she enriches my life every time I'm around this woman, okay? And it's been a pleasure staying here with her these last few weeks while Esther's over there, because on her wall, she has the genealogy of her Hungarian family. And I spent a half an hour with her going
Yep.
through all the
Her
people. I
grandparents.
mean,
Yep.
her side of the family was basically just the elite, intellectual elite. Now I can understand the intelligence that you, Bernadette, and Judy have, your sisters have, because that gene pool is just off the charts, and it's just amazing. And looking at your father's
Maybe
side,
one
God,
of these days I'll talk about my
you know,
family.
she she gave me a little. I says, "Well, aren't you and Esther writing a book?" And she says, "Yeah, but we haven't worked on it for a while." So my little message to you on this little section, Esther, is Tempus Fugit. Finish the book with Mom.
I know.
Okay,
I
it'd be
know.
a great, great story about heroes from Hungary that we really don't know about as Americans. And you had losses in the concentration camp on your father's side. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
And as she told me, I think one of your uncles was actually
Aunts.
the lawyer of Albert
Oh,
Einstein.
yes.
All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
so I mean, come on,
One of my
hello,
uncles. Right.
right? Hello. So I mean, these
All
stories
right.
need to be told. They need to be
Thanks,
told,
honey.
Bunny.
I needed
All
to
right,
hear that. Thank you, honey.
seriously.
Uh, Listen, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit the like button, share it with a friend, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We come to you every week talking about all things Sicily. And by the way, did you guys like my video on Noto? Alfred said it was a little bit too much of my CNN side because I didn't work for CNN, but I worked for TV for a long time in the United States. And he said it needed a little bit more oomph.
All
I
right,
don't know. What did
wait a
you
minute.
guys think?
Since she brought it up, I want everybody to look at Esther for a second. You can see that she's got an effervescent, bubbly personality, correct?
Yeah.
So when we do our videos, or at least when I'm with her, she bubbles exuberance. I love it when she is like, "Oh my God, look at this! Oh my God, look at
I
this!"
did a couple of oh my gods, look at this in this
Okay, but
video.
you want to know
But by
something?
the way,
I
did
think
you know
people
that?
appreciate that.
Do you know that?
Because
Oh my
some of
God.
these people would never be here, and some of these people don't experience the excitement that you feel. So I wanted to just bring it out. That's all. The only thing I'll say.
By the way, you know that piece in the Noto story that I did that I opened up and went up to the towers and I opened
Yeah,
up the door. I didn't
yeah.
know the camera was running and it caught me saying, "Oh wow." That was
Now,
completely by accident.
you
Because
know,
you can see the camera work is like a little bit all over the place because I didn't know I was recording.
I think that as we're now experimenting with different formats, okay,
Right.
of doing video work, because if you look at our stuff today, and you compare it to our stuff 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it's like a different planet. Okay,
Different styles.
we have evolved. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing back in my suitcase new equipment with me that we purchased here. So when we do our handheld stuff, it'll be a lot more stable, and there's have microphones on it and stuff like this. But I think that people want to pretend that they're walking down the street with us, and they're right with us to our right and to our left. And
Yeah.
I think that spontaneous stuff is good. I think we have to insert a little bit more spontaneity into it. I mean, besides the history stuff is okay,
Yeah.
except when we do serious scholarly pieces. We're still waiting to do, for example, we have to finish off with Gaetano Cipolla and do the Muslim occupation and the Norman
Yeah.
occupation. I'm
We'll
hoping
work
that
on that.
this winter time, when it's lousy out, because we have all the B-roll, all the
We
video.
have a lot of the
You know,
video.
you sit down one of these days, and then now we have a whole picture of the history of
That has
Sicily.
to
Not
be
the
more
whole picture, but
scholarly. That has to be more CNN-ish. You're
that's
right.
correct. And then,
All right, honey.
on those. Wait a minute, I have one other thing to say. Can I
Yeah.
finish off with a story?
Yeah.
All right. You know, in I've never spoken. I've been very this week, thinking about my grandfather and so forth, and I was also thinking about some of the other relatives that I had who fought in the wars. Okay, the Sicilian guys who fought for the United States. Now, I just want to quickly tell you about my uncle Finney. They used to call him Finney, but his real name was Frank Lascola, Finney. They called him Finney because he was a gambler on the
Yeah.
ships, on the troop, and he'd always be broke because he was a lousy gambler, and he'd always borrow a Finney, that's what they call him. But Finney was born in Italy. That's my grandmother's brother, and he was brought up by my grandmother because the mother and father had died in the influenza outbreak in 1908 when they came over here. Anyways, when Finney was first coming over here, first coming from Sicily to America, the brothers were in Palermo at the dock, and the oldest brother, my uncle Phil, took a rusty nail on the side of the road and banged it into a bench that was on by the dock. And the boys promised that one day one of the boys would come back and find that bench and think about the whole family. Well, then fast forward about 15 years later, 12 years later, my Uncle Finney was in Patton's army. Okay, he was an interpreter. He was a guy that went out and foraged for eggs and grapes and
Yeah.
fresh produce. Okay, because he spoke fluent Sicilian. On leave, he went back to the dock, and sure enough, 15 years later, he found that bench that had that nail driven into it into the
Wow.
back, right? My Uncle Frank Lascola, another example of a hero that never said a word about it. And then one day he told me the story about that. And
Awesome
I
story,
remember
honey.
then I wept. And every time I think about it now, I kind of like get misty-eyed when I think of the scores of Americans of Italian extraction and
Right.
also Italian extraction who had to prove to the Americans, so to speak, that they were in fact Americans because there were Italian American
Yeah.
internment camps. And these guys took some heavy, heavy losses. And I think
So
that
sad.
I think it's profoundly important that the spotlight of public opinion needs to be turned on these Sicilian American, Italian American war
Agreed.
veterans who are dying every day, and also in the other wars. One of the guys, last thing I want to say is a guy right down the street from us. His name is Antonelli. Okay. He was a way up there colonel, decorated during the Second World War, fought in Bataan, Guadalcanal, and all these other things. No one ever knew about it. I
Wow.
mean, next door in our neighborhood were heroes of the wars. And, Veterans Day went by last week. And from now on, I'm going to start thinking about and talking about publicly. We need to put the spotlight on these men, not only from the World War II, but from Korean War,
I agree, Alfred.
Afghanistan,
I agree.
Vietnam, as John Sato, my pal, who clandestinely fought in Laos and Cambodia during the
I agree
war,
100%, Al. I agree
right? I
100%.
mean, it's crazy. It's
As you
crazy.
know, I'm very involved with the veterans group
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in
right.
Massachusetts.
So anyways,
Great
I think it's a
stories,
little
honey.
what?
Great stories.
There are great stories, and I think maybe I'll put a couple more in my book. I think this thing about, well, we're gonna get Stefania to translate some of my grandfather's
Definitely.
recollections.
I'm so looking forward to seeing
So,
that.
so
We'll
today's
have
my
to talk
last day
about it.
really with the kids. Actually tomorrow, but today is like I'm gonna meet my cousin and have a hamburger with him. And by the way, people says, have you been gouging yourself on food? The answer is no. I've only been eating one meal a day, and I haven't really repeated except for Chinese food.
Good for you. You deserve
All
it,
right,
honey.
I
You
think so.
deserve it.
I think so.
All
Well,
right.
anyways, I'm locked and loaded here. And
I can't wait
Esther,
to
did
see
I
you
say to
back.
you, you look marvelous? Did I say that to you today?
Can't wait to have you back here in
Yeah.
Sicily. We all miss you here. On
Is,
that note, thank you
okay.
so
Wait a
much for
minute. Did Jim
watching.
Ingram leave? Did Jimmy Ingram leave?
Yes, like days ago.
I miss him already. Jim's a
I
good
miss
guy.
him too.
Jim Ingram, he was your assistant there. He did a hell of a job. Jimmy Ingram, if you're listening to the show, we miss you.
We miss you.
And you know, you're a good guy, Jimmy. No matter what I say to you, you're a good guy and we love you. All right, Esther. That's what I
On
wanted to
that
say.
note, thank you, thank you, thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you on another chat.
La
Ciao.
Benediga. Ciao.